Xi Jinping does not hide his ambitions. In speech after speech, in official Communist Party documents, and in directives handed down through the People's Liberation Army, the message is consistent and chilling. Taiwan must be reunified with the mainland. In Beijing's framing, this is described as the essence of China's national revival, a sacred obligation that must be fulfilled by 2049, the 100th anniversary of the founding of the People's Republic of China. That is a countdown with a fixed end point, and the military establishment in Beijing is not waiting for it to arrive, according to former commander of U.S. Indo-Pacific Command Admiral Philip Davidson. China could be ready to pursue its Taiwan objective as early as 2027. That Davidson window, as it has come to be known, has shaped American and Japanese defense planning for years. A Washington-based research organization has documented that China now operates 134 air bases within 1,000 nautical miles of Taiwan, with roughly 650 hardened aircraft shelters already built and ready. This is not a country that is bluffing. China is explicit about what it considers Taiwan's legal status. Though the People's Republic has never governed a single day of Taiwan's modern political life, Beijing views the island as a rebellious province, a territory to be reclaimed by diplomacy when possible, and by force if necessary. Taiwan's own defense ministry is not operating under any illusions. Officials have described a chilling opening scenario for a potential full-scale invasion. It would not begin with soldiers on beaches. It would begin from the sky. Taiwanese officials have warned that a conflict could open with between 5,000 and 10,000 missiles launched simultaneously. The objective is brutal in its simplicity: destroy Taiwan's radars, flatten its airfields, knock out its command centers, and blind the island completely, all within the first 60 minutes. Shock and awe on a scale the modern world has never witnessed. Beijing has purpose-built its arsenal for exactly this mission. The DF-15 and DF-16 short-range ballistic missiles are specifically designed to strike Taipei and its surroundings. The CJ-10 is a low-flying, high-speed cruise missile capable of threading through mountainous terrain to find its targets. And then there is the DF-21D, the weapon that American naval planners lose sleep over, specifically engineered to sink US aircraft carriers before they can reach the fight. China calls it a carrier killer. Military analysts call it a game changer. But Taiwan has not been sitting still. In recent months, Taiwan received its first Harpoon coastal defense systems in a substantial delivery: 100 launchers and 400 land-based RGM-84L for Harpoon Block 2 anti-ship missiles. These systems are forming the backbone of a new coastal warfare command scheduled to become fully operational on January 1, 2026. This is not a marginal upgrade, it is a structural shift in how Taiwan plans to fight. Local commanders equipped with these systems can engage Chinese naval vessels at long range, independent of Central Command Authority. When a Chinese missile is detected, local commanders do not wait for orders from Taipei. They act. The Harpoon Block 2 missiles incorporate inertial and GPS navigation specifically hardened to operate in challenging electronic warfare environments, exactly the kind of signal jamming battlefield that China's PLA has trained to create. These coastal systems also serve another purpose: they complicate China's ability to quietly sever Taiwan's undersea fiber optic cables, the communications arteries that connect the island to the world. In a conflict, those cables are among the first targets. The new Coastal Warfare Command changes that equation. China's invasion plan has become significantly more expensive to execute. That precisely is the Goa. Before fully examining the Taiwan theater, it is essential to understand the northern dimension of this crisis, because Japan is not merely watching what happens across the Taiwan Strait, it is watching what happens right above its own territory. On August 19, 2025, Russia's Ministry of Defense confirmed that Tu-95 MiS nuclear-capable strategic bombers, escorted by Su-35s and Su-30M fighter jets, conducted a 6-hour patrol over the Sea of Japan. The Kremlin described it as a routine long-range aviation mission. The timing, however, was anything but routine. The patrol came precisely as the United States and South Korea were conducting large-scale joint military exercises. The message was deliberate. This was not a one-time event. In January 2025, Tu-95 MiS bombers had already conducted a provocative patrol near Hokkaido, Japan's northern island. These flights form a consistent pattern, a drumbeat of nuclear signaling aimed directly at Tokyo. The Tu-95 MiS, known by NATO as the Bear H, is not a relic to be dismissed. Each aircraft carries Kh-101 nuclear-capable cruise missiles, with ranges exceeding 2,500 kilometers, enough to strike anywhere in Japan without the aircraft ever leaving international airspace. Japan's Air Self-Defense Force scrambled F-15J interceptors to shadow the formation as it entered Japan's air defense identification zone. Russia walked right up to the line and stared. The message from Moscow is explicit. Japan has supported Ukraine with money, materials, and diplomatic isolation of Russia, and Russia is reminding Japan that Tokyo sits well within range of nuclear missiles. This creates what defense analysts describe as a two-front pressure campaign: China threatening from the south, Russia probing from the north. For a nation that constitutionally renounced war in 1945, it is an extraordinary position to be in. And then there is a weapon that most people do not want to talk about. On November 1, 2025, Russia launched the Khabarovsk Project 09851 nuclear-powered special-purpose submarine at the Sevmash shipyard in Severodvinsk. It exists for one purpose: to carry and deploy the Poseidon II M39 nuclear torpedo, as detailed in the U.S. Naval Institute's Proceedings Journal in January 2026. The Khabarovsk was designed from scratch around the Poseidon system, carrying 6 of these autonomous nuclear-powered underwater drones, each between 65 and 80 feet long. The Poseidon operates at depths of up to 3,000 feet and at speeds estimated around 70 knots. In October 2025, President Vladimir Putin personally announced a successful test of the Poseidon's nuclear power unit, stating publicly that Russia had for the first time launched it from a carrier submarine and activated its nuclear power unit under operational conditions. The Poseidon is not designed to destroy a ship. It is designed to destroy a coast equipped with a nuclear warhead. Estimated between 2 and 100 megatons by various analysts, it is built to detonate near a shoreline, generating a radioactive tsunami capable of rendering coastal cities uninhabitable for generations. Russia is moving this capability into the Pacific, the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace noted in a January 2025 analysis that Russia's nuclear modernization program has faced serious delays due to sanctions, component shortages, and the diversion of industrial capacity to the Ukraine war. But delays do not equal cancellation. The Khabarovsk has been launched. The Poseidon is now real. The strategic signal could not be clearer. If you intervene against our interests, we can flood your cities. This is the environment Japan has woken up inside, and this is why what Tokyo does next matters enormously to the future of the entire Pacific. Japan's response to this mounting pressure is not panic. It is transformation, the most sweeping rearmament the country has undertaken since the end of the Second World War. For 7 decades, Japan operated under the constraints of its pacifist constitution, a framework born from the ashes of World War II that formally renounced the right of belligerency. Defense spending was capped at 1% of GDP. Japan could defend itself, but it could not strike first. For generations, that constitution was treated as near sacred, defining Japan's identity as a peaceful trading nation. That framework is now being systematically dismantled, according to Japan's Ministry of Defense, which released its FY 2026 defense plan in late December 2025. Japan's defense-related expenditures are set to rise to approximately 8.818 trillion yen, roughly $56 billion, representing approximately 2% of GDP. Japan's defense spending has now increased for 13 consecutive years. Prime Minister Sanae Akaichi personally advanced the 2% GDP target by 2 full years ahead of schedule. Since 1976, no Japanese cabinet had dared breach the 1% ceiling. That ceiling is now gone. And it is not just the money, it is what the money is buying. Japan has signed a $1.7 billion contract to acquire 400 Tomahawk cruise missiles, covering both Block 4 and Block 5 variants with ranges of 1,600 kilometers by fiscal year 2025. 3 Japanese Aegis destroyers Chokai, Haguro, and Kirishima had already been modified to launch Tomahawks. 2 more, Myoko and Atago, are being fitted in fiscal year 2026. Japan has acquired the ability to hit targets more than 1,000 miles away while its ships remain safely beyond enemy weapons range. That is a counter-strike capability. Japan now has it. But Tomahawks are only the beginning. Japan is simultaneously developing what it calls the improved Type 12 surface-to-ship missile in multiple variants: ground-launched, ship-launched, and submarine-launched. The ground-launched version tested successfully in the United States in October 2024 and again in the summer of 2025, with a range exceeding 1,000 kilometers. Parts of China and North Korea already fall within striking range from deployment sites on Kyushu alone. Beyond that, Japan is developing two separate hypersonic weapons programs: the hypervelocity gliding projectile for island defense, which completed its final test launches in the summer of 2025, and a separate hypersonic missile platform, described as flying beyond Mach 5. These weapons are designed to defeat the dense air defense systems that China has spent decades constructing around its naval task forces. And now, the laser. Japan's Ministry of Defense confirmed on December 2, 2025, that a 100 kilowatt class high-energy laser system has been installed aboard the experimental test ship JS Asuka at the Isago shipyard. The system has been in development since 2018 under Japan's acquisition, technology, and logistics agency ETLA. It combines domestically produced 10-kilowatt fiber lasers into a single focused 100-kilowatt beam housed into 40-foot containerized units, with Kawasaki Heavy Industries holding the production contract. What makes this system fundamentally different? The economics. A Patriot missile costs between $3 and $4 million per shot. When China plans to flood the battle space with thousands of cheap drones and cruise missiles in the opening hours of a Taiwan conflict, a missile-based defense has a structural problem. You run out of interceptors. You simply cannot buy enough expensive missiles to shoot down enough cheap drones. A laser fires at the cost of electricity, as ATLA itself stated in program documents. So long as sufficient electrical power is available, the system can continue engaging threats without ever running out of ammunition. Japan is also advancing an electromagnetic railgun program. ATLA conducted the world's first successful ship-mounted railgun firing test from June to early July 2025, with a projectile fired at a real ship target. Japan's future 13 DDX destroyer class is planned to carry both railguns and high-powered lasers. These systems would be capable of engaging high-speed targets at Mach 6, including incoming hypersonic weapons. If fielded, a single Japanese destroyer could fire railgun projectiles to intercept the very hypersonic threats that China is building. This is not incremental improvement. This is a fundamental redesign of how Japan intends to fight. Japan, crucially, is not acting alone. America's response to the Pacific crisis is playing out on multiple levels simultaneously. U.S. Marines equipped with anti-ship missiles have been stationed on the remote islands of Okinawa, turning the first island chain into what analysts describe as a fortified maritime barrier, a wall that China's Navy cannot breach without catastrophic losses. Japan's deployment of medium-range surface-to-air missiles on Yonaguni Island, confirmed by Defense Minister Shinjiro Koizumi in November 2025, places Type 03 Chusam batteries on Japan's westernmost territory, just 110 kilometers from Taiwan's eastern coast, interlocking with Patriot PAC-3 units on Miyako Island and Aegis destroyers. In adjacent waters, these systems create overlapping engagement zones from Taiwan to Okinawa. Chinese air and naval forces cannot operate freely in that corridor. The strategic alliance in the Pacific is widening in ways that would have been unimaginable a decade ago. Australia, long cautious about antagonizing China while sheltering beneath the U.S. security umbrella, announced in August 2025 that it had ordered 11 improved Mogami-class frigates from Japan's Mitsubishi Heavy Industries. Australia is simultaneously building nuclear-powered submarines under the AUKUS agreement with the United States and United Kingdom. These Virginia-class boats will patrol the Indo-Pacific and provide alliance partners with deep-water strike options that China cannot easily counter. South Korea, despite decades of historical tension with Japan rooted in the Second World War, is now forming a closer security alignment with Tokyo against shared threats from North Korea and an increasingly aggressive Russia. The KF-21 fighter program represents Seoul's most ambitious indigenous aerospace project, adding another highly capable platform to the regional balance. Even the Philippines, a country that evicted us military bases in 1991, has fundamentally reversed course. In April 2025, Manila received a second batch of BrahMos supersonic anti-ship missiles from India. In February 2025, the Philippines announced plans to procure submarines for the first time in the nation's history. Japan is also in active informal consultations with Manila about exporting Type 03 surface-to-air missile systems, which could extend the defensive network southward into the South China Sea. A democratic arc of deterrence is being forged across the Indo-Pacific, stretching from Seoul through Tokyo to Canberra, underpinned by American military power and increasingly capable indigenous forces. And here is the bitter irony: Russia's strategy of nuclear coercion and China's military expansion may be the very forces that forged this coalition, as a CSIS analysis published in late 2025 concluded. Beijing's divide and rule strategy for the Indo-Pacific is beginning to fail. Rather than keeping democracies fragmented and mutually suspicious, China's military buildup and Russia's nuclear intimidation have accelerated the democratic convergence Beijing most feared. Historical wounds between Japan and South Korea that persisted for 80 years are healing not out of sentiment, but out of strategic necessity in the face of shared threats. The U.S. Navy has also forward deployed the laser-armed destroyer USS Preble to Japan since October 2024, equipped with a 60-kilowatt Helios system fully integrated into the Aegis combat system. The United States and Japan are now operating directed energy weapons side by side in the Pacific. China's strategy for Taiwan depends on speed. Military analysts have extensively documented what they describe as Beijing's blitzkrieg doctrine. China knows that a prolonged war against the United States and Japan is unwinnable. Its economy depends on maritime trade, and a naval blockade enforced over months would devastate Chinese industrial output. Therefore, Beijing's plan is to move with overwhelming speed, crush Taiwan's defenses, establish control of the strait, and present the world with an irreversible fait accompli before American carrier strike groups can respond. But the speed window is narrowing. Every Tomahawk deployed to a Japanese destroyer, every laser system undergoing sea trials, every additional Harpoon battery defending Taiwan's coastline, every Type 03 missile battery on Yonaguni, every marine anti-ship missile battery dug into Okinawa. All of these systems are adding days, then weeks to the time it would take China to secure a clean military outcome, and in a conflict with this coalition, days equal defeat. The 2023 CSIS War Game on a Taiwan Contingency found that in a conventional conflict, the United States and its allies could prevent a successful Chinese amphibious invasion, but at significant cost. The study reported that in the base case, China would lose approximately 138 ships. Japan's expanding arsenal, its lasers, hypersonic weapons, tomahawks, and railgun program is designed to make those Chinese losses even more severe, faster, and from longer range. The question Beijing must answer is this: is unification worth the destruction of the PLA Navy? There is one more dimension that demands attention: the electromagnetic and information domain. China is not standing still while Japan installs lasers and orders tomahawks. Beijing has been systematically documenting every weakness in Taiwan's and America's electronic architecture: drone incursions near Taiwanese radar installations, ships conducting surveys of undersea cable routes, electronic warfare exercises timed to coincide with US-Japan joint drills. All of this is intelligence gathering for day one of a conflict. China wants to blind its opponents before the first kinetic weapon is fired. Taiwan's 2025 Hongguang military exercises explicitly trained against this threat. The drill simulated a scenario in which China began an invasion by disguising military forces as civilians and dredgers and commercial vessels, triggering gray's own ambiguity before the shooting starts. Taiwan practiced identifying and responding to these deceptions at speed. The decentralized, trigger-sensitive response doctrine is not just about missiles. It is about surviving the first hours of confusion when China will try to paralyze decision-making entirely. What does all of this mean for the shape of the world over the next decade? Japan's defense transformation is now irreversible. The defense buildup runs through 2027 and represents the most significant rearmament since the Second World War. A next-generation fighter aircraft is being developed jointly with Italy and the United Kingdom, aimed at deployment in 2035. The 13DDX destroyer concept carrying railguns, lasers, and hypersonic interceptors is in active design. Taiwan's coastal defense is being fortified systematically. The Coastal Warfare Command becomes operational in 2026. Harpoon batteries are in place. Type 12 missiles are coming online. Taiwan's forces are training explicitly for a decentralized, resilient, deep resistance operation that would make any Chinese occupation politically and militarily catastrophic. This is the paradox at the heart of the Pacific crisis. Building deterrence is the rational strategy, but the very act of building it may accelerate the scenario it is meant to prevent. As the deterrent becomes more formidable, the temptation to act before it fully materializes grows. The more powerful the wall, the more urgent the impulse to move before the last brick is laid. We are watching in real time one of the most consequential strategic competitions in modern history. The Pacific is not yet at war, but it is no longer at peace.